Welcome everybody to the prayer circle, and in this session we want to talk about another mindset. And so what we're doing here is we're actually, in every session, we're thinking about one thing that needs to be a mindset for us to really feel this call to prayer in a bit of a natural way. So we're talking about the mindset of a praying church and of a branch type leader, and today we want to talk about relationship in this particular session. And the question is, who is to be the focus of our praying? Remember last session we talked about ownership. Now we're talking about focus. We talked about ownership, now we're talking about relationship. And I wrote down here some pain points. There's some bad habits in praying, I think. And also there's always nearly a concentration on the outer man. In other words, we would be talking about our finances or our health. And I know those things are important. But really, all people grow from the inside out. And just a lot of our praying, probably an overabundance default in our praying, is that we go to the outer man. And it can become really deadening. I made a list when I started on this journey. I made a list of things that I haven't liked about prayer. And I wrote down too much meaningless talking and repetition. And so it becomes like public speaking and long recitations. How many of you, just raise your hands, how many of you would say you are a talker? Can I see your hand? You're a talker, okay? How many would say, now that's not a bad admission, by the way. So how many of you would say, I prefer to be silent? Okay, so what I find in prayer meetings is that people who would prefer to be silent have a hard time forming prayers because they think it's some kind of speech. And so then they don't come to prayer meeting. There's too much focus on needs, too much informing God about circumstances, and so forth. So I do believe we kill our prayer meetings many times. We mean well, but we just got a lot of bad habits. So I want us to move to the thought of have a relationship with Jesus in prayer. And the key verse that we want to use in this session is Revelation chapter 3 and verse 20. Now, if you went to vacation Bible school like I did, this verse is always used with regard to salvation. So it's used to tell unsaved people how to come to Jesus. But really, the context of this verse is to the local church. It was a church in Laodicea. It was a nauseating church because they said they were rich and increased with goods and didn't have need of anything. Jesus said, you're lukewarm because of that attitude. You make me sick. I want to spew you out of my mouth. And he called them to repent and to recognize that they were really impoverished. But in the midst of that nauseating letter to this church, he wrote, behold, I stand at the door and knock. Isn't that just like Jesus? If anyone hears my voice and opens the door, I will come into him and dine. I like the old King James, sup with him and he with me. Now guys, let me tell you what's happened here. The God of the universe, the one who's the heir of all things, he's the express image of the Father. He upholds all things with the word of his power. He by himself purged us with his own blood. He is seated at the right hand of God. And in this verse he says, by the way, as sick as you make me feel, if you'll open the door, I'll come in and I'll sit down and I'll stay with you at supper as long as you want to. Now, is that incredible? That's incredible. How many of you have ever had dinner or an outing with somebody you really wanted to be with? I have. I remember back years ago, I took some of my conference money that the church gave me and I invited Dr. Warren Wiersbe to lunch. And believe it or not, he came. He had just finished pastoring at Moody Church, and he came and met me at a restaurant. And for 5 hours, I sat with Dr. Wiersbe, and I asked him any crazy Bible question I wanted. And he signed one of his books. I thought I was in heaven. And I just think there's no reason why we, who are as ignorant as we are, can't sit down. We pay a lot of money sometimes to get advice, church advisors to come in and tell us what needs to happen. But here's Jesus, the owner of the church, saying, let's talk. Why can't we do that? So I'm saying to you, let's turn prayer into understanding that it really is a meeting with Jesus. And in this church, he said, these folks were praying. They thought they were rich and cool, and so they prayed with no heart. And then he told them they were poor, so then they began to pray with no hope. And then he told them to repent, and I can see them praying with just no rest. But the person who really enjoys this is a person who, through all the struggles, eventually gets at the table with Jesus and just talks about it. And we can talk, and then we can listen. It becomes a dialogue. You know, we cover this in this book, Pray with Christ. We cover it in this book, The Life of the Vine, the Soul of the Church. You can find us at praywithchrist.org, or you can find us also at paradigm1.org. Follow our blogs, and let's learn about this whole idea of making prayer a relationship, a time at supper with Jesus.